Hey everyone, it's Christine, the Mighty Morphin Fashion Ranger. This is kind of an overdue video, but I've been getting some comments and some DMs about my IGT video that I posted a little over 2 years ago because my son is actually, he just turned 3, which is crazy. If you've been following me for a while, you probably saw like when I was pregnant and when I had him. So yes, it has been 3 years, but I kind of just wanted to do almost like a really delayed part 2 to that video because I have learned some things since then that might be helpful to the people who have been messaging me about that. So I actually just rewatched that original video, which might be why my makeup looks a little hot messy, because it did make me cry a little bit revisiting that. But it was good because I feel like some of those things I had forgotten a little bit about, which is crazy that stuff that's traumatic like that, you tend to forget some of the details. But anyway, just a quick recap. When we brought my son home from the hospital, we noticed that obviously he was like losing weight and everything. He wasn't getting his weight back up. I noticed that he hadn't had a bowel movement in a couple days. So then when we took him to the doctor had suggested me pumping just to see how much I was getting out. I wasn't getting like anything. I went to see a lactation consultant. After a lot of evaluation from her, we figured out through like trial and error that nothing was boosting my supply. And then through research of my own and this great Facebook group that I had found, I figured out that I likely had IGT and also markers of mammary hyperplasia, which in the original video, I had thought at the time that they were the same thing. They're not actually the same thing. I have learned since then that even though you can have some of the markers of mammary hypoplasia, you don't necessarily have IGT. They are kind of two separate things, but a lot of times they do intersect and people can have both. I definitely have both because of what my breasts look like and the symptoms of both, and the IGT has been confirmed because everything else has been ruled out. So specifically talking about IGT, I did try to breastfeed my son. Like I said, I tried like triple feeding, power pumping, eating all the things that they tell you to eat. I tried a hospital grade pump rented from my lactation consultant. I also, after that video that I originally filmed, I bought a Spectra pump, which is technically a hospital grade pump that like you can own yourself. And I highly recommend that one if you're looking for a new pump. I had better success with that one than either of the Modellas that I tried. I just like that one a lot better. It's a lot more comfortable. It's also a lot more customizable. Sorry that this weird light is on my face. It's because of the time of day. But I liked the different options that it gave you because it was more customizable than just the regular Medela pump that I had, that I got through my insurance, and also the Medela pump that I rented through the hospital. So I really liked the Spectra 100%. If you have the choice, get that one. Loved it. So I used that for probably the last, I think like 2 months that I was pumping and trying to breastfeed. I only ended up breastfeeding and supplementing formula at the same time for my son until he was about 4.5, 5 months old. That was how long I lasted, because at that point, it really seemed like he wasn't interested in like breastfeeding anymore. He was too into the bottle because obviously it's like a quicker process. He doesn't have to work for it as much. And at that point, like I was back at work, I was pumping and everything. Honestly, it becomes really like a hassle. I was trying to make time at work for it. He didn't seem interested. I was frustrated with the fact that my supply was low, and like when your cycle comes back, that also was a factor. There were a lot of different things happening. And at that point, I was basically like, I am mentally ready to stop. I barely make enough. I was barely, at that point, I was probably making between like 2 and 3 ounces over the course of the entire day. So he wasn't getting a lot from me as it was, because that was my entire supply. And that was honestly like at the peak of my supply. It was really average. It was closer to like 2, maybe even lower. So at that point, I was basically like, I'm ready to give this up. I feel physically ready. And my advice that someone else gave to me, and I 100% agree, is don't quit breastfeeding on a bad day. Because I was going to originally, and then I felt really guilty about it. Quit on a good day where you feel like emotionally prepared and you feel good about your decision. And that is what I ended up doing. And I felt completely at peace with it and have not looked back. Obviously, he's 3 now, so it's not like he would be breastfeeding now anyway. I'm so sorry about this freaking son right now. But anyway, the other part of this that I wanted to go into, kind of 2 different things. So I did go to my primary care doctor kind of after all of this had happened, and I discussed all of this with him, and he agreed that, like, based on lab work that I had done, I did not have any sort of thyroid condition, which can contribute to low supply. So if you do have low supply, definitely get that looked into. PCOS and insulin resistance, and those do overlap. So if you do have PCOS, you can have insulin resistance. I didn't have either of those. And there are a few other like hormone related things. I didn't have any of that. So in my case, I genuinely have IGT when there's like nothing else that you can attribute it to. So he agreed with the lactation consultant and the OB that I was going to that I am a genuine case of IGT, because there's no underlying condition that I have that could contribute to me having a low supply. There's legitimately no reason for it. As for the like underdevelopment, I guess you could say, of my breast tissue, there are some theories out there that it can be from something that happens during puberty, like if you were exposed to certain like chemicals, or even potentially like while you were in your mother's womb. That's a theory too. Or it could be from being obese as a child or during puberty, which that was definitely a thing for me. So I don't know if like the hypoplasia is due to that. But again, that doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to have IGT. So I don't really know. But the other part that I think is kind of cool-ish and was really like, it made me feel a lot better about all of this, was completely unrelated. I had a lot of symptoms going on. This was when my son was about a year old. So like after I had stopped breastfeeding, it had been a while. And I had had some pain in my armpit and in my breast, and I had felt some lumps that we thought were like lymph nodes and stuff. So one of the things that they did was they sent me for a mammogram. And one of the people in the IGT group that I'm still in online, because I just feel like it's helpful information for me to still be able to access, they were like, hey, if you're going for a mammogram, sometimes they can like see that you don't have glandular tissue in your breasts. And I was like, really? Like, I didn't even think about that. So when I went for my mammogram, totally accurate. I have like no glandular tissue because the lady did the mammogram and then she was like, "Okay, you're done." And then I think I must have brought it up because I already had that thought in my head. I was like, "Hey, can you just like tell me if you can see any glandular tissue in my breast just out of curiosity?" And I explained, I had a lot of trouble breastfeeding, and someone told me that since I was diagnosed with IGT, that you might be able to see like the lack of glandular tissue in my breast. And her response was like the best thing. She was like, "Oh, yeah, I can see like everything in your breast," which is great for mammograms, but I can imagine that you had a terrible time breastfeeding because that would be terrible for breastfeeding. And she like showed me on the scan, and the spots that like were like tiny areas of glandular tissue, those were literally the spots that I mentioned in my previous video. There was like a small strip that would get firm when like my breasts were like full before I would feed, even though they were never like really full. But that's the only part that would get like firm. Those were the spots. So like that was really cool to actually be able to see. And I was like, okay, there's literally nothing I could have done. There's nothing I could have done. That is what's in there. Out of my control. Couldn't have done anything. That's just what I was dealt. So that's just what I wanted to do as an update video for you. I don't know if this is helpful for anyone, but I just wanted to add that additionally for anyone who wanted an update a few years out of breastfeeding. My son is 3. He is great. He is tall. He is like 90th percentile for like height and weight. He's adorable. He's so smart. It literally does not matter that he was not breastfed at all. I love him so much. I'll probably insert a picture of us at the end because we had family pictures taken for Christmas. So that's all. Thank you for coming and stopping by my channel, and hopefully I'll be uploading more videos soon.